With T-minus 71 days before the election, a tale of two very different campaigns is coming into razor-sharp focus. On the one hand, Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz riding high after last week's Democratic National Convention and poised to hit the ground running in the all-important battleground state of Georgia with a bus tour and a rally later this week. On the other hand, you have the ex-president, who, after struggling to reclaim the spotlight last week as 26.2 million Americans tuned into the Democratic National Convention, has spent the last 24 hours flip-flopping and second-guessing whether he's going to show up to that debate with Vice President Harris in September on the 10th in Philadelphia. Last night, he hinted that he was considering skipping the only debate the two campaigns have officially committed to, posting a litany of grievances and complaints about the moderators of that debate, ABC News, wondering aloud, quote, why would I do the debate against Kamala Harris on that network? And attempting to play the role of television producer himself, telling everybody to, quote, stay tuned. Then came news of an impasse between the two campaigns over ground rules, specifically over hot mics, and, quote, whether the candidates' microphones will be muted when it is not their turn to speak, a demand originally made by the Biden team and agreed to by Trump. Except now that Kamala Harris is the nominee, quote, Harris's campaign wants the microphones to be hot at all times, as has historically been the case at presidential debates. And that seems to have sent Donald Trump into a tailspin. Take a listen.
Do you still plan to participate in the ABC debate?
Well, you know, I watched this weekend, and it's the worst of all networks. When I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another network. I want to do it. So we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it. They also want to change the rules. You know, the deal was we keep the same rules.
Would you want the microphones muted in the debate whenever you're not speaking?
We agreed to the same rules. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me.
Quote, doesn't matter to me. And yet, maybe it does. Just look at that time span. Less than an hour after saying it doesn't matter to him whether they have hot mics or not, Donald Trump was bellyaching about it again on Truth Social. For their part, the Harris campaign had this to say, quote, Trump said unmuting the mics, quote, doesn't matter to me. But this resolved, everything is all set for September 10th. And that is where we start today with former senator and co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill, plus former Republican congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly. And with me at the table, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and New York Times editorial board member and MSNBC political analyst Mara Gay. Friends, what's happening here? Vaughn Hilliard.
This is a moment here where Donald Trump, I recall being in Green Bay, Wisconsin earlier this year with him. He had a podium set up next to himself on stage, and he said, I'll debate anytime, anywhere. Of course, that was Joe Biden, who he was running against at the time. But this is now a moment here where Donald Trump is suddenly facing this candidate here who has raised a record amount of money in a short month. He has watched his polling numbers flip. And suddenly for him, there is a realization that who he would be debating with on that stage is not the same person. His campaign, they want to stick to what won them that first debate. But Donald Trump, you just heard him himself suggesting that, maybe he's fine with having the mics open here. This is a man who is running the Donald Trump campaign with 2 months left. Yes, you can bring on Corey Lewandowski. You can build out an apparatus. But right now, this is a man who just last week on a campaign stage said he is more focused on keeping Democrats from cheating than actually the get out the vote operation. This is a man who single-handedly will determine whether he wins the presidency or not. And it is coming at a time where he's putting into question whether he's actually going to join that debate stage or not.
And we'll talk about the infrastructure and the money and the volunteers and the momentum, because it is all happening all at once, David Jolly. But, it was one thing to watch Vice President Harris prosecute the case against him on stage at the Democratic National Convention. It's going to be quite a different thing to watch her on stage with him prosecuting that same case.
It will be interesting. And that night, all of a sudden, the conventions will be a distant memory, because campaigns are linear and there are inflection points, and whatever happens at the debate, should there be one, that will then become the latest defining moment. And that is important for Vice President Harris. I mean, I think there's a baked-in assumption that she's more nimble, she's smarter, she's more competent, she understands policy better, and therefore she can outbox Donald Trump on a stage. But Donald Trump doesn't play by traditional rules. And so it may also be, what presence does Vice President Harris bring to the stage? I think all indications are it will be a strong one, and indeed she will look very strong against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's wrestling with something that we rarely see, Alicia, in a presidential campaign, which is he's becoming oddly irrelevant to the story of this campaign. I know that's hard to say. He's still getting 45%. But there is nothing that he wakes up and does that changes people's mind. And if anything, he's like that person who always lies to you, who always says something else, as Vaughn says, who's so erratic you don't quite know where he is day to day, and so you just ignore him. He has the enthusiasm of an aging cat at this point. And in contrast, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, coming off the convention, not only have all the momentum from a convention that was incredibly successful, but this new expanded coalition across the country that is saying, look, I don't want Donald Trump. And I wasn't sure I wanted Vice President Harris, but now I kind of like where Vice President Harris is going, and I want to go with her in the direction she's taking the country. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz have all the momentum right now. Donald Trump has none of it.
Well, Claire, let's talk about that momentum, because sometimes it is hard to quantify what that actually means. I think money is one way of understanding that momentum. There was a memo released this week in the campaign saying they have raised more than $540 million. That includes $82 million that came in during convention week, what the Harris campaign touted as, quote, the most ever for any presidential campaign in this time span. It's a tactical advantage, Claire. It's also a psychological one.
Yeah, especially when you consider where that money is coming from. You know, one of my most interesting evenings at the convention was visiting with some big donors. And you know what they figured out, Alicia? They figured out that they're becoming irrelevant. Big donors are no longer essential to the Harris-Walz campaign. They are not going to spend time in venues trying to raise money from a bunch of folks who've gathered a bunch of checks that have commas in them. They are getting their money from folks who are giving $5, $10, $25. That's where this money is coming from. It is broad-based. Meanwhile, Vance, if you look at his schedule, he is dominating his days with raising money. So they are not in the same position that Harris-Walz is in terms of this groundswell of volunteer support and monetary support. And maybe the best thing the internet has ever done for politics is maybe putting little money into politics is finally going to do a better job of taking big money out of politics, which we'd all like to see, especially after the Citizens United decision.
Mara, the senator led me exactly where I wanted to go, which is if you drill down on that big number and look at where those donations were coming from, the campaign calls it unprecedented grassroots donation. 1/3 of those contributions during the convention week were from first-time contributors, about 1/5 of whom were young voters. You've seen big numbers, teachers, nurses. I think there's been this question of what the Harris-Walz coalition was going to look like. It would seem that those numbers are beginning to paint a picture.
Well, the other thing that we have to remember about small donations is if someone who wasn't engaged in politics before, old, young, from any background, has decided to donate to a political campaign, they sure as heck are going to vote. So it's really a strong indicator of enthusiasm, of turnout in an election in which it's really going to, I believe, depend on Democratic turnout. If those numbers are high, I think that ultimately Vice President Harris will become president. And the other thing to remember here is that, you know, this is a campaign, the Harris-Walz campaign, that I think has really captured energy that was already there among Democrats who have been wanting to see someone at the top of the ticket fight and fight hard for democracy, for women's reproductive rights, for the America that they believe in and that they want to see continue to become a multiracial democracy. So it's starting to look a lot like this is not only a presidential campaign, but is actually a pro-democracy movement. That's how it feels at these rallies. That's how it felt at the DNC.
It's bigger than her.
It's bigger than him. Her. It's bigger than Walz. And that's the message. And of course, when you contrast that with Donald Trump, me, it looks even more distinct.
Right. You know, I thought about that as Harris was on stage at the convention because she employed this sort of story of self, story of us, story of now framework for her speech. And I thought to myself, well, Donald Trump could tell a story of self. He tells a story of self all the time, loves to talk about himself. There is no story of us and there is no story of now. It is all a story about yesterday. Right. So where does the Trump campaign then go from here, given the extent to which they have boxed themselves in and they are watching the momentum that is bubbling up on the Democratic side?
I think that this is when you talk about how do you win elections. And one person can say that they're boxed in, but you could also make the case that they are boxed in among the major demographic of the American electorate. 44% of the American electorate in 2020 were non-college educated white voters. And when you go out to rallies, including out in Arizona on Friday night, they packed in, had more people inside the exact same venue that the Harris-Walz campaign filled just 2 weeks prior, because they understand that if you can galvanize, there's not, a coalition for the Democrats is so key and important. And while Republicans and Donald Trump would like to pick off a few extra percentage points among black voters and Latino voters, they understand at this point in time, 2 months out, for Donald Trump to win the campaign, somebody who can not have a broad message and somebody who's not going to have a moderating message, they need to galvanize their major bloc. And their major bloc right now are those 44% of the American electorate who are non-college educated white voters who went in 2020 by 2/3. And so if you can go out there, and this is where you see Tim Walz especially trying to make those inroads with, sort of the crunchy Midwest white voter, right? If they can make those inroads there, that is where the Donald Trump campaign sees that they believe they have a path, and at least they're within the margin of error in polling. Because if those voters come out like they did in 2020, when Donald Trump did get 81 million votes, they still believe they're in the ballgame.